Arkansas looks ordinary from the outside. You see green hills rolling endlessly into the horizon, rivers cutting their patient paths through the stone, and small towns that feel like they've been frozen in time. Church bells still ring on Sunday mornings. Pickup trucks idle in driveways while their owners wave at neighbors they have known for decades. From a distance, it seems quiet, even safe, as if the chaos of the outside world never quite settled here. But if you have ever lingered past dark in the wrong place, you start to feel something else, a pressure, a kind of awareness in the air that does not belong to you. You get the uneasy sense that the stillness is not peace, but patience, like the land itself is waiting. And if you ask too many questions, you will hear the same warning whispered again and again. Do not talk about the strange things here, not the caves, not the graves, not the water. Because Arkansas has a way of swallowing its own stories, and sometimes it swallows the people who tell them too. Now, what I am about to share with you is not folklore. It is not the kind of thing kids tell each other around a campfire, trying to scare themselves into laughter. These are real reports filed, recorded, whispered to authorities, and then left unresolved. The paper trail exists, but the answers do not. And the people who live through them, they carry scars, some visible, some not. I want you to picture this. You are deep in the Ozark forest. The canopy above is so thick, even noon looks like dusk. The air smells of damp leaves, old stone, and something faintly metallic. There are trails, sure, but most of them do not lead anywhere official. They just wind, pulling you further from where you started, until you are not sure if you are walking forward or circling back. It is the kind of place where your phone loses signal within minutes, and even your own voice sounds wrong when you call out. And somewhere in that vast, breathing wilderness, there's a cave, not marked on any map, not on any hiker's guide. It is hidden behind a ridge that collapsed decades ago, half buried in moss and twisted roots, as though the forest is trying to erase it. Locals have a name for it, Whistler's Hollow. They do not agree on why. Some say it is because of the wind that threads through the rock in a way that almost sounds like music. Others insist it is because the cave itself sings. But here's the unsettling part. It only sings when you are alone. The path to it is not obvious. If you try to find it, you can't follow your eyes. You have to listen, not for birds or for running water, but for the moment those things stop, for the absence itself. Because the stream that guides you there disappears underground, leaving behind nothing but silence, so thick it feels like it pushes against your skin. People who have been there say it is like stepping into a vacuum, as if sound itself has been pulled out of the air, and that is when it begins. The accounts vary. One man swore he heard a lullaby, only it was backwards, like the notes had been rewound. Another described it as a single chord so pure it vibrated his teeth. A woman who entered alone claimed it was not music at all, but a voice, not hers, not human, a voice singing something she almost recognized but could not place, like a memory she was not supposed to remember. She fainted, and when she woke, her watch was shattered. In her pocket, there was a smooth stone she did not recall picking up. Carved into it was a symbol, a circle cut jaggedly in half. This is not just hearsay. Park rangers have received reports for decades from hikers who wandered off trail and stumbled onto something they could not explain. In 2004, a college group brought recording equipment. Most of the audio was static, but at precisely 12:19 a.m., their device picked up a piercing tone that lasted 13 full seconds. An audio engineer later studied the waveform. It was not random. It had structure, patterns that resembled sheet music. She tried to replicate it, but she never finished. She abandoned the project entirely. The cave itself is not geologically unusual, at least on paper. Limestone pockets like this at the Ozarks. But those who venture inside report something stranger than stone. They say time does not move normally. You forget how long you've been in there. Some forget why they came at all. A few even forget their own names for a heartbeat or two, long enough to panic. Long enough to feel that whatever's inside the cave knows them better than they know themselves. One hiker wrote later that it was like the cave was rewriting him, erasing who he was and replacing it with someone else. And in 1987, when a teenager went missing for a full day, his parents found him barefoot, dehydrated, sitting just outside the entrance. He was whispering a tune they had never heard. When they asked where he had been, his answer was chilling, inside the sound. Those words, inside the sound, echo in my head every time I think about Whistler's Hollow. Because the more you hear, the harder it is to chalk it up to coincidence. Carvings line the walls deeper inside, circles, eyes, teeth, arrows. But one image repeats over and over, a human ear split right down the center. And those who've gone inside often report that in the days following, they can't stop humming songs they do not recognize, melodies they can't record because every time they try, the audio fails. A musician once visited, notebook in hand. He did not hear the cave sing. He believed the cave heard him, and it answered with something he could neither forget nor recall. Imagine that memory burned into you, but just out of reach, like a song stuck in your head. Only it is not your song, and you are not the one who put it there. And the strangest part, if you stand just past the ridge where the stream vanishes and the official trail ends, you can still hear it faintly. A low hum, searching for a key. Some swear it is getting closer to finding it. That is just one fracture in Arkansas, a place where silence does not just exist, but breathes. And yet, as bizarre as it sounds, the cave is not the only story, because Arkansas has layers. Some are hidden underground, some burn in plain sight. And the next story is not about sound at all, it is about fire. Fire that burned where it should not, and refused to burn where it should have. A farmhouse that lit up in the night, but whose basement froze. The blaze began without warning. No storm rolled through that night. No lightning cut across the sky. No faulty wiring later blamed. Just a quiet August evening in 1954 on the edge of the little town of Blevins. A farmhouse sat there 2 stories, wooden beams, peeling paint on the shutters. Ordinary in every way, except for what happened after sundown. Neighbors were the first to notice. Pale smoke rising out of the upstairs windows. Not dark, choking smoke, but thin and white, almost like dry ice evaporating. It moved strangely, too, curling back on itself instead of drifting upward with the wind. Within minutes, the glow of flames flickered behind the curtains. Calls went out. The fire department rushed down the dirt road, sirens splitting the stillness of rural Arkansas. What they found left them whispering for years afterward. The second floor was ruined, blackened walls, beams cracked and groaning, furniture twisted and warped. Yet the basement, where the fire supposedly started, remained untouched. Not just untouched, frozen. The air down there was a steady 38 degrees Fahrenheit, while the house above still smoldered. Imagine walking down charred stairs expecting heat on your face, and instead feeling a wave of cold so sharp it makes your teeth ache. That is what the firefighters described. Tools down there were coated in frost. A pitcher of water had solidified into half-frozen slush. Even the neatly stacked fire would glisten under a film of ice. No sprinkler system, no refrigerant leak, no chemicals that could have caused it. Just frost, in a room that should have been an oven. The door leading down to the basement told its own story. Scorch marks licked around the frame, but the center was bare, as if the flames had recoiled, unwilling to cross that threshold. The homeowner, a man named Thomas Kell, survived. He told investigators he had fallen asleep on the living room couch. What woke him was not smoke, but something sweeter, something almost pleasant burnt sugar. When he opened the basement door, the cold rushed out at him. And then came the sound, faint but sharp, like teeth cracking inside a wall. He slammed the door and never opened it again. The official report called it an undetermined thermal anomaly. Privately, though, a firefighter admitted to a local journalist that it felt like the flames had stopped on purpose. Like something told it no, he said. Kell moved away within a year. Couldn't stand to stay. The house stood vacant until 1960, when another family bought it, unaware of its history. They lasted 3 months. When asked why they kept the basement locked, the father said simply, "Something down there does not want warmth. It remembers cold." That phrase spread. The idea that the basement was not cursed, but reclaimed. That whatever had been buried deep beneath the soil had no use for fire, no tolerance for heat. And when the house burned, it revealed itself. Teenagers, of course, were drawn to the ruins. Some went looking for a thrill and found nothing but cobwebs. Others came back shaken. One boy said every time his flashlight beam hit the basement door, it dimmed like the bulb was being drained. Another placed his hand on the knob and yanked back immediately, his skin red and stinging as if frostbitten, though the summer air outside was sweltering. In 2002, a local teen recorded his exploration. Most of the footage was typical dark hallways, nervous laughter. Then he pushed the basement door open. The camera showed his breath fogging, though he wore only a t-shirt. He whispered, "It is so cold." Then the audio cut out. For 47 seconds, there was nothing but the creak of wood and a faint cracking, like ice splintering from the inside. When the footage resumed, the boy sat outside against a tree, shivering uncontrollably. His lips were blue. He had no memory of leaving the house. Scientists tried to explain it away, perhaps a freak gas release or some odd chemical reaction in the soil. Yet no traces of gas or refrigerant were ever found. The explanations never held. The foundation is all that remains now, overgrown with weeds and time. The wooden frame collapsed decades ago, reclaimed by rot and weather. But hikers still wander near. Every so often, someone reports a thin film of frost on the stones, even in midsummer heat. One woman said the air made her dizzy, like standing too close to something that should not exist. She pressed her hand to the wall and described it as touching a memory that wanted to erase itself. Fire consumes. That is its nature. It spreads, devours, takes. But what if coal can do the same? What if it spreads too? Not with flame, but with absence. The basement in Blevins is a reminder that not everything wants a burn. Some places hold on to the cold like a grudge, refusing to let go. And that raises a darker question. If fire and coal can both consume, what happens when something takes you away neither can? What happens when a man steps into the woods and simply dissolves, not into ash or ice, but into nothing at all? He was not the type to wander. That is what everyone said. Harold Keyes was deliberate, a man of systems and lists, someone who kept his socks folded by color and his tools lined by size. 42 years old. Steady job as a surveyor, steady routine, steady life. He was not chasing adventure, and he was not careless. That is what makes his story so disturbing, because people like Harold do not just vanish. It was an ordinary morning when he left for work on a stretch of the Ozark Highlands Trail. He had been contracted to mark new boundaries for a conservation project. Nothing dangerous. The weather was clear, the trail well marked, the terrain forgiving. Harold was not a hiker, was not an outdoorsman. He was just walking his assigned route with his equipment, his notebook, and his dog, Lucy, a black lab mix who followed him everywhere. He told the ranger he would be back before dusk. He never came back. When he did not return, the search started quickly. They found his truck where he left it, keys still in the ignition, a thermos inside, coffee still warm. At the trailhead, a single boot print pressed into the dirt. Beyond that, nothing. No broken branches, no disturbed leaves, no drag marks. Just silence, as if Harold had stepped off the face of the earth. Search teams swept the area. Dogs picked up no scent. Helicopters circled. Volunteers combed every ridge, every hollow. The forest offered nothing. 3 days later, they found his backpack, not dropped in haste, but placed, sitting neatly on a rock ledge overlooking a dry stream bed. Inside, everything was in order, food untouched, water still full, GPS powered off, notebook closed. On the first page, a single line in Harold's precise handwriting: "I am not lost, but I am not here either." Those words twisted the search into something else. No longer just a missing person case. Now it was a riddle. They searched harder. Still no Harold. But 6 days after he vanished, Lucy came back. The dog padded calmly into the parking lot, where Harold's truck sat. She was clean, uninjured, but she was not the same. Every strand of fur was gone. Not burned, Not disease, just gone. Veterinarians examined her. Skin perfectly healthy, follicles intact, but every hair stripped as though erased. She refused to step into the woods again. Months passed. People began to accept Harold was gone. And then came another anomaly. A hiker passing through in early spring found boot prints far off the trail. They matched Harold's size and tread, but they were not fresh. They were pressed beneath layers of leaves, as though the earth itself had recorded them before the forest shed. The strangeness did not end there. In 2009, a filmmaker using a drone to capture footage for a local documentary noticed something odd. Reviewing the video later, he saw a figure at the edge of a clearing, facing the trees. The man wore beige, stood perfectly still. But when zoomed in, the outline was not right, blurred, unfixed, like heat distortion. The shadow, though, was sharp and perfect, cutting across the ground with precision. When the filmmaker returned to the spot 2 days later, the figure was gone. Only a metal survey marker remained. Initial scratch faintly on the edge, H.K. The authorities offered theories: medical emergency, wrong turn, animal attack. None held. His GPS showed no deviation from the trail. No storm had rolled in. No blood, no clothing, no trace. Some believe he slipped into a crevice or cave. Others say he lost his mind and wandered until he died. But those who knew Harold swear that was not possible. He was meticulous, cautious. Nothing in his life was ever left undone except Harold himself. And hikers since then have reported unsettling sensations on that stretch of trail. Not the feeling of being watched, but of being reduced, as if part of them stopped walking while their body continued. A subtraction of self. One woman said she glimpsed a man stepping behind a tree, yet he never emerged. When she checked, the space was empty except for a fresh print in the soil. Nearby, she saw a reflection in a puddle, only it was not mirroring her. It was facing away. The woods reclaim, that is what people say. They take back what is left behind. But in Harold's case, it feels like something else entirely. Not reclaiming, dismantling, as if the trail itself pulled him apart, piece by piece, until nothing was left that belonged to this world. And the question lingers like a shadow across the ridge. What if Harold did not go anywhere? What if he simply stopped being here? That is the weight of the Ozarks. Sound that erases memory. Coal that refuses flame. A man who dissolves into subtraction. But Arkansas does not stop there. Because not every danger hides in silence or the woods. Some poisons are poured into the veins of a town in broad daylight. And everyone can smell it, but no one can escape. At first, it was only a smell. A chemical tang drifting through Crosset at night. Sharp as vinegar, acrid as burning plastic. People grew used to it. They joked, that is just Crosset, the way townsfolk do when the strange becomes ordinary. But beneath the laughter was resignation. Because when you live downwind of the largest paper mill in the South, you learn to stop asking why the sky tastes bitter. But the deaths began, and they did not fall like dice, scattered randomly across town. They gathered in clusters. Whole streets losing families within years. Children diagnosed with cancers, so rare doctors hesitated before saying the words. Parents burying more than one child, then falling sick themselves. The mill loomed at the edge of town, its smokestacks belching a haze that painted the night orange. The jobs it provided kept food on the table. But the cost of that survival was something no one wanted to tally out loud. Crosset was industry. Crosset was livelihood. Crosset was, in time, grief. By the late 90s, whispers hardened into patterns. One family lost 4 members in 6 years. Neighbors began to compare notes. Houses backing onto the same drainage canal seemed cursed. A ditch ran behind them, carrying runoff thick as motor oil. Its surface glistened in unnatural colors, rainbows without light. Children called it the Black Creek. Parents told them never to play near it. But what else do children do when the woods and water are their only playground? Activists began testing the water. The results were more terrifying than rumors. Formaldehyde, arsenic, dioxins, chloroform, Each name a death sentence when consumed over years. The kind of toxins that do not just kill, but twist cells, rewiring the body against itself. And still, officials denied it. Reports closed quietly. Scientists who raised alarms found their reputation shredded. The company pointed to lifestyle choices, smoking, diet, anything but the effluent streaming daily into the soil. Tragedy, they said. Coincidence. But the people living there were not imagining it. They documented everything. Photographs of fish washed ashore belly up, slick with a residue that clung even after the water receded. Videos of white foam bubbling from ditches during rainfall, so thick it seemed alive. Children with unexplained nosebleeds sustaining pillowcases in the night. Trees leaning at strange angles, trunks warped as if trying to crawl away from the poisoned earth. The most haunting discovery came from a single alley. 15 houses lined it. 11 of them had lost someone to cancer. That alley earned a name locals whisper like a curse. Cancer Alley. One man, David, had worked at the mill before becoming an activist. He walked the creek each morning, camcorder in hand, documenting the water. His voice carried determination, but behind it, weariness. Then the seizures began. His wife found him collapsed in the yard one evening, unconscious under the same sky that still smelled of acid. His final recording showed the creek rippling against its own current, as if something beneath the surface was pushing back. 6 months later, David was dead. The coroner called it natural causes. His lungs, however, were blackened as though he would smoked all his life. He had not smoked a single cigarette. Whispers grew stranger. Some said the drainage canal made noises at night, voices layered under the trickle of water. Dogs refused to drink from it. Birds flew over but never landed. A woman woke to find her faucet running blood red. The water tested normal hours later. She never trusted the tap again. In 2019, a documentary called Company Town tried to shine a national spotlight on Crosset. Faces of the grieving filled the screen. Names of the lost scrolled longer than credits should. And yet, the mill still runs. The stacks still burn. The air still smells of chemicals when the wind changes direction. This is not haunting in the way we usually think of it. No pale figures gliding in the night. No footsteps in empty rooms. Crosset's haunting is chemical, cellular. It lives in bloodstreams and bone marrow, in the silences left by absent neighbors, in the houses that empty out one by one. But perhaps the eeriest part is not death. It is memory. Some residents swear they recall Crosset differently, as if the town once felt cleaner, brighter. As if childhood summers held clearer skies and purer air. Yet when they try to picture it, the memory won't hold. It slides away, replaced by a darker, heavier image. Almost as though the poison does not just kill the body, but corrodes the past, rewriting what people remember about their own lives. And that question lingers like smoke. If a place can poison your lungs, can it also poison your mind? Can it bend memory itself until even hope feels contaminated? From Crosset's poisoned waters, we move back to the quiet of graveyards, where memory takes on another shape not erased, not twisted, but sung back to the living from beneath the ground. Graveyards have their own kind of silence. Not the stillness of caves or the heavy pause of poisoned air, but a quiet that feels attentive, like something beneath the ground is listening. In White County, tucked at the edge of Judsonia Cemetery, that silence is not empty at all. On certain nights, it hums. The cemetery itself looks like countless others across Arkansas, weathered stones leaning at odd angles, grass overgrown, cedar trees twisting their roots around forgotten markers. But near the far edge, beneath a cedar that bends low and crooked, lies a grave with no name. Just a shard of limestone worn smooth by time. The only mark carved into it is a circle split by 3 vertical lines, like sound waves trapped in stone. That is where the stories begin. In the 1920s, a group of children playing hide and seek bolted home, pale and breathless. They claimed the ground itself had started humming under their feet. One boy swore he heard his name in that vibration, whispered without words. No one else heard it, but he refused to step foot near that tree again. Decades later, the accounts kept coming. In the 1970s, a man walking his dog said the pitch changed as he approached settling into a perfect A-flat. The hum grew stronger when he thought of his brother, who had passed years earlier. Not when he said the name aloud, but when he thought it, the vibration answered memory. The sound is not predictable. It does not rise with the wind or follow the seasons. Some nights the cemetery is still. Others, the hum rises like a buried flute, pressing against the bones of anyone near enough to feel it. And that is the key. You do not hear it with your ears. You feel it in your chest. A resonance more than a sound. People describe it differently. Some say it soothes, like a lullaby you did not know you needed. Others stumble away nauseous, eyes watering, teeth aching as though the pitch vibrated the roots. One woman brought 2 recorders, determined to capture the phenomenon. Both devices produced silence. Yet on playback, her own voice could be heard faintly, saying, "I never gave you permission to sing." She swore she never spoke those words. Researchers try to ground it in science. Underground aquifers shifting under pressure, distant trains vibrating the earth. But seismic instruments showed no disturbance. And the strangest detail, the sound never carries. 10 feet away, silence. Directly over the grave, it floods your ribs. In 1999, a musicologist visited with a tuning fork. He stood over the grave, fork in hand, waiting. Before he even struck it, the hum rose to match. His notes later leaked. "It sang me my grief in a key I did not know I remembered." He left Arkansas the next day. He never published. Some locals whisper the grave does not hold a body at all, that it was never meant to bury the dead, but to contain something else, an echo, a frequency, a memory that refuses to quiet. Others believe it is the opposite, that someone was buried there who could not stop singing, even in death. Stand there long enough and you will feel it seep into you, a tone that does not leave. And if it aligns with your breath, matching the rhythm of your body, you will never unhear it again. Because it is not just a grave that sings, it is a grave that listens. And it sings you back to yourself in ways you might not be ready to face. That is the danger of Arkansas's fractures. They do not all claw at you violently. Some slip in softly, through resonance and memory, until you can't tell if the voice belongs to the ground or to you. And if the earth can sing, it can also drown, just as graves refuse to quiet. Lakes sometimes refuse to accept what is given to them, which brings us to a valley flooded in the name of progress, where a town refused to stay buried underwater. Progress, they called it. The 1940s brought dam projects across the South, concrete walls rising where rivers once roamed free. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers flooded valleys, reshaped maps, and erased entire communities in the name of reservoirs and electricity. On paper, Lake Norfolk was triumphed, a glittering body of water in northern Arkansas, stretching for miles, promising recreation and power. But under that surface lies a town that never agreed to go quietly. When the dam gates closed, the valley filled, swallowing farms, churches, cemeteries, and homes. The government promised relocation. Families were paid. Headstones were moved, or so they said. Yet divers whisper that not all graves were carried to higher ground, that some headstones moved, but the bodies beneath them did not. Fishermen tell of sonar pings that return images of shapes too angular, too deliberate to be rock. The outlines of houses, porches, barns. Entire neighborhoods sitting at the lakebed like ghosts of wood and stone. Curtains still swaying, tables still set, waiting. In 1982, a diver named Sam Brewer descended to examine one of those structures. He was seasoned, methodical, calm. When he surfaced minutes later, he was pale, gasping, eyes wide with something he could not name. He said only one sentence before packing away his gear forever. There's a front porch light still on. He never dived again. A year later, a survey team used early underwater video equipment. What they recorded rattled them enough to shelve the footage. Flickers of light deep below, pulsing, shifting, like lamps being switched on and off in homes no longer standing. No wires, no electricity, just impossible illumination in a place that should know only darkness. Within 6 months, The lead technician quit his career entirely. And then came the drowning. A 14-year-old boy went swimming near Hand Cove on a windless summer afternoon. The water was calm, the kind of glassy stillness you would think safe. His parents turned their heads for seconds. When they looked back, he was gone. 3 days later, they recovered his body. His lungs were filled with water, but his clothes were dry. Mud clung beneath his fingernails, though no soil lined the shoreline, as if he had clawed at something beneath the water, something that was not supposed to be there. A retired ranger once mapped disappearances across the lake. The cluster circled a specific area, a region directly above the drowned town of Henderson. He believed Henderson had not sunk willingly, that its buildings collapsed in slow motion, roofs folding like stubborn hands, floors twisting against the weight, resisting the flood. That resistance still lingers in the water above. Modern visitors report strange malfunctions. Boat engines sputter and die inside that same circle. GPS devices scramble into nonsense. A drone operator once flew over and captured interference, forming a perfect ripple on the screen, a circle that never faded. One frame cut to static, then flash an image, a window underwater, and something pale pressed against the glass from inside. He deleted it, but not before the story spread. Fishermen talk of knocks. Faint, deliberate taps echoing from beneath when the water is stillest. Not bubbles, not waves. Knocks, as though someone or something were signaling from inside a house no longer meant to exist. And when the mist clings low across the lake at dawn, the surface perfectly smooth, some say they have seen ripples forming without cause, as if something beneath shifted, restless, refusing to be forgotten. That is the danger of drowning a place. You think water buries things, that it erases history. But history resists. Some towns do not stay under. Some memories refuse to dissolve. Henderson may be submerged, but on certain mornings, Lake Norfolk remembers too loudly to ignore. And with that, we have reached the last of these 6 fractures. A cave that sings, a basement that froze, a man who dissolved, a town that poisoned itself, a grave that hummed, a lake that would not drown its dead. Each story different, yet tied together by the same unsettling truth. Arkansas does not just hold secrets, it keeps them. But the strangest part is not just the stories themselves. It is how they linger. How people leave these places and carry something with them, songs they never learned, cold that never fades, memories that warp. As though Arkansas is not content to contain its mysteries underground or underwater. It wants them to spread. And once you have heard them, you are part of that spreading. Because maybe these are not just tales of the past. Maybe they are doors. And doors once opened, never quite close again. 6 places. 6 fractures in the fabric of what we think reality should be. A cave that sings in the dark. A basement that froze beneath fire. A man erased mid-step. A town poisoned by its own lifeline. A grave that hums grief into bone. A lake that refused to drown quietly. At first glance, they seem separate stories scattered across the map of Arkansas, each with its own flavor of impossible. But the more you let them sink in, the harder it is to shake the sense that they are connected. Not connected by geography alone, though many lie within the Ozarks' rolling shadows. Not even by folklore, though locals whisper them with the same mixture of denial and dread. No, what binds them is the pattern. A rhythm of erasure and memory, of places that take more than they give back. Think about it. The cave does not just echo sound. It erases silence and replaces it with a voice you can't forget. The basement does not just resist fire. It remembers cold so fiercely that even decades later, the ground still shivers in midsummer. Harold Keyes was not dragged away by claws or swallowed by mud. He was subtracted, unmade, his absence neatly folded into a sentence no one could explain. Crossett's poison did not stop at killing bodies. It burned away trust and memory itself, leaving residents unsure if they ever lived in a cleaner world. The grave does not mourn, it sings back grief you did not know still lived inside you. And the lake, it does not flood quietly. It pushes back, knocking from below, insisting that what was buried still breathes. Each mystery pulls at the same thread, The tension between remembering and forgetting, between what the world hides and what it refuses to release. And maybe that is why Arkansas feels different to those who've lived here long enough. The forests, the rivers, the small towns, they hold more than history. They hold unfinished stories, waiting for someone to brush too close. Outsiders might call it superstition. Locals know better. They do not laugh off the warnings. They lower their voices, glance at the tree line, and change the subject. Because here, silence is not empty. It is layered. You hear in the caves that hum, in the graves that sing, in the nights when Crosset sky burns metallic. You feel it in the basement that still exhales frost, and in the ripple of water over Henderson's ghost streets. Silence in Arkansas is never just silence. It is a space where something is waiting to be remembered. And once you notice that pattern, you start to wonder how many more places like these are scattered across the state. Stories that never made it past a sheriff's logbook, a yellowed newspaper clipping, or the shaky recollection of a neighbor who swore they would seen something but learned to stop talking about it. The weight of these mysteries does not end when you leave the forest or step away from the shore. They travel with you, a tune you can't stop humming, a sudden draft of cold air in a warm room, a memory that feels borrowed. They creep into your own story, like a vine wrapping around the edges of a house, pulling tighter, pulling deeper, until the house itself belongs to the roots. And that is the realization that chills most. It is not just Arkansas that is fractured. It is us. These stories cling because they speak to the cracks already inside the human mind, the fear of vanishing without explanation, the dread of being poisoned by something we trusted, the ache of grief that finds its own voice, the terror that our memories are fragile, that our places are not as permanent as we think. Arkansas just gives those cracks a shape, which brings us closer to the end. Or maybe not the end, because endings are too neat for a land like this. Maybe it is more honest to call it a reminder, a warning. Because if Arkansas can keep secrets so tightly, what is to stop those secrets from spreading further, looking for the next place to hum, the next house to freeze, the next trail to erase? The hardest part telling these stories is not the strangeness. It is not the impossible tones echoing from stone or the ice that blooms where fire once raged. It is not even the boy who surfaced with dry clothes or the town whose water ran thick with poison. No, the hardest part is how ordinary the beginnings always are. A walk through the woods, a house asleep on a summer night, a family living beside a creek, a graveyard tucked behind a cedar, a lake rippling in the sun. Normal places, everyday places, until they are not. That is why people warn you not to talk about them. Because once you do, you start to see the edges differently. The trail is not just a path anymore, as a question. The basement is not just a room, it is a threshold. The lake is not just water, it is a surface stretched tight over something waiting. Arkansas does not leap out screaming its secrets. It waits for you to notice. And when you do not leave untouched. Think back to the cave. The hikers who return home humming songs they could not record. Think of Harold's notebook, the single line that still gnaws at anyone who reads it. I am not lost, but I am not here either. Think of Cross's mothers who look at their children and wonder if the air itself is rewriting their futures. Think of the grave that hums you back to your grief until you carry it like a new scar. None of these things end neatly. They linger. They change you. And maybe that is the point. Some places do not want closure. They do not want explanations. They want to live on in the body, in memory, in the way your breath catches when the wind dies too suddenly. They want to hum inside you, so you become another vessel carrying their story forward. That is why these tales are not just folklore. They are fractures, fault lines in the ordinary world. And fractures do not heal when you cover them up. They spread. So if you're tempted to seek them out, to stand where the boy whispered his name into the soil, or to dive where porch lights still glow in the dark, remember this: some doors do not close after you open them. You can tell yourself you are only looking. You can promise yourself you will leave nothing behind. But Arkansas has a way of taking things you did not intend to give your time, your warmth, your voice, sometimes even your place in the world. And maybe that is why the locals lower their voices when you ask. why they smile thinly, shake their heads, and say, best not to talk about it. Not because the stories are not real, but because once you have heard them, once you let them in, they do not stop. They keep humming, keep knocking, keep rewriting. So turn off the lights, keep your headphones on, sit with the silence now, and see if it stays silent. Because if it does not, if you hear something faint, low, tuning itself just beneath your breath, then you will know. Arkansas has found you, too.